Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome everyone. We're going to share the screen. And we should be seeing raising children as good Hindus. Is that what we see?
Yes.
Excellent. My screen a little neater here. Aha. Okay, I neglected to do something. Need to, there we go. Try again. Oh, we're still in our series, Raising Children as Good Hindus. Educational Insight section, April 2021 issue of Hinduism Today, which is now on our website. For those of you who don't have the printed copy, you can read it from our website. And we are dividing it up in 9 Zoom satsangs, and congratulations, we're on the 9th satsang. First section, cultivating 9 key spiritual qualities. The 9th quality to develop is a prejudice-free consciousness. Prejudice-free consciousness manifests when we see God in everyone and fully embrace differences of ethnic background and religion. Are we born with prejudices? Absolutely not. So if we're not born with them, where do they come from? That's the first question to you. Where do prejudices come from? Clearly, if we're not born with them, we learn them. Where do we learn them? At home, at school, and elsewhere. Second question, how is prejudice-free consciousness developed? More than one answer to that, so see if you can find 1 or 2 answers. It is through teaching our children that the whole world is our family and all human beings are divine beings. Sounds natural, but lots of people don't think that way. They don't think that everyone is a divine being. They think they divide people in some way. These people are good, these people are bad, these people are my chosen people, these people are my people. They're not concerned about everyone. So we need to be concerned about everyone. And the Hindu perspective is that everyone is a divine being. Or if you take it one step further, you are everyone. Or Shiva is everyone, and you are Shiva. It is through complete avoidance of remarks that are racially or religiously prejudiced. It is through discussing with our children any prejudice they hear at school or elsewhere and correcting it. It is by teaching children to avoid generalizations about people and instead to think about specific individuals and the qualities they have. Take a fun example. In the U.S., the winners of the National Spelling Bee are quite often children of Indian ethnicity. So you could think all Indians are great spellers. That would be a generalization, but not every Indian child in the U.S. is a great speller. So each individual needs to be seen for his or her individual qualities and not labeled with a positive or a negative generalization. Television and movies can provide useful situations to discuss, as we've mentioned before. Everybody's your teacher. It's just that some people teach you what to do and other people teach you what not to do. Acceptance of others is nurtured by having children meet, interact, and learn to feel comfortable with children of other ethnicities and religions. This is very important. It happens in some countries automatically, such as Singapore. You're mixing every day with people of different ethnicities, but in the U.S., it's not necessarily the case. We had an interesting event a number of years ago. A university teacher spent a sabbatical in Hawaii. First he went to Oahu and was learning Buddhism, and then he came here to learn Hinduism. And he happened to mention that until recently he'd never met a Hindu. The first Hindu he ever met was a Hindu dentist who took up practice in his town. So he'd never even met a Hindu. So if you've never met someone, it's easy to have misconceptions about who they are. So at the children level, it's great if you can get your children to interact with others. It avoids misconceptions being developed. Tolerant individuals help communities function with less friction and misunderstanding. Gurudeva teaches, every belief creates certain attitudes, and our attitudes govern all our actions. This is a really important one. If you want to understand why someone is acting a certain way, it's based upon attitudes, and those are based upon beliefs. Belief in karma, reincarnation, and the existence of an all-pervasive divinity throughout the universe creates an attitude of reverence, benevolence, and compassion for all beings. Ahimsa, non-hurtfulness, is the natural consequence of this belief. Second section. One of Hinduism's wise precepts. The idea here is Hinduism is not always presented in a way that it relates to what's going on in the world. Teaching children about it, it tends to be presented in an abstract way or a way that makes it seem like it's ancient history. We need to show how it relates to today's world. And the point here for today is other world religions, and that Hindus believe that all of the major world religions are valid paths and everyone is well placed in their chosen faith. Hindus do not proselytize, meaning they do not try to convert members of other religions to Hinduism. Proselytizing is based upon the belief that one's religion is the only true religion, and therefore everyone in another religion should join it. So if you're not used to this happening, it may seem very strange, but it does happen in the U.S., for example, in Texas. Lots of fundamentalist Christians, they go out on the weekend, knock on the doors other people and try and convert them to their religion because they believe their religion is the only true religion. So instead of going to the church to worship, they're going out and trying to convert people. So we need to respect that, but we need answers if that's happening in our area. Hindus hold the opposite point of view, which is that all faiths are good and the members of those religions are just fine remaining in the religions they are in. It's very disruptive to society if when people are pulled out of the religion they're in. Each religion has its unique beliefs, practices, goals, and paths of attainment, and the doctrines of one often conflict with those of another. Even this should never be cause for religious tension or intolerance. Gurudeva, Hindus respect all religious traditions and the people within them. They know that good citizens and stable societies are created from groups of religious people in all nations. So what we're trying for is stability. However, it is important to teach children that while Hindus do not proselytize, Hinduism does and always has accepted new members into the religion who seek to participate at its deepest levels. It is simply not true, as uninformed commentators too often say, that you have to be born a Hindu to be a Hindu. When asked by a devotee about this idea, Swami Vivekananda responded, "Why, born aliens have been converted in the past by crowds, and the process is still going on." Hindus who marry a non-Hindu spouse who is interested in the Sanatana Dharma wisely encourage him or her to study and eventually enter the faith, so they can together raise their children as devout Hindus rather than being torn between two faiths. So we've mentioned that before. It's huge mistake to try and raise children by exposing them to two different religions. They will generally reject both because of all the differences between them. Third section is on imparting beliefs and attitudes. Teach about the three great powers: desire, action, and wisdom. Important insights into the soul's maturing process can be gained by looking at the three Shaktis of God. Icha, the power of desire. Kriya, the power of action. And Jnana, the power of wisdom. The three powers of the soul are also the same. We first have a desire, and when the desire becomes strong enough, we act. In young souls, the action may be ill-conceived and wrongful or adharmic, lacking in wisdom. For example, we want a computer, so we simply steal one. We need money, so we borrow with no intention to repay. The soul is repeating a cycle of similar experiences, moving back and forth from desire to action, desire to action. In the case of the adharmic action of stealing, eventually the soul will learn the lesson that theft is not the best way to get what we need or want. The learning is the Jnana Shakti, wisdom, causing his behavior to improve. This process works for virtuous or dharmic actions as well. For example, we volunteer at the temple to teach children's classes once a month. We are uplifted by the feeling that helping others gives us, and decide to help out every week and even participate in meetings to plan out the classes. Selfless action and the reaction it has on us brings an inner joy. In this way, Jnana guides us to decide to undertake even more service and thus feel more joyful. We have again improved our behavior. If children are taught about these three basic forces at work in their life, they will seek to understand desire, think about action, and strive for wisdom. Second topic. Continuing with climbing the ladder of consciousness. In our last three Zoom satsangs, I presented the idea that human consciousness can be thought of as a ladder with 14 rungs, so we'll just do a short review in case anyone missed it. The lower rungs represent the lower states of consciousness, and the higher rungs represent the higher states of consciousness. An excellent understanding of these states is found in the Hindu system of the chakras. 7 principal chakras can be seen psychically as colorful multi-petaled wheels or lotuses. They are situated along the spinal cord from the base to the cranial chamber. Additionally, 7 chakras, barely visible, exist below the spine. They are seats of instinctive consciousness, the origin of jealousy, hatred, envy, guilt, sorrow, etc. They constitute the lower or hellish world called Naraka or Patala. 7 lower chakras range from the lowest of murder and malice up to fear and lust. Fear is the highest state of consciousness in the 7 lower chakras. 7 higher chakras range from the lowest of memory up to illumination and godliness. Much better, higher state. As we previously studied, Hindu teachings have 2 aspects, the intellectual concept and the actual experience. So we always want to remember that. Hinduism is not simply going to school and understanding the concept and therefore getting an A. We need to actually experience it after we've understood it. Or it's more like dancing. You understand what the step is, but you don't get an A until you actually can do the step. First 2 Zoom satsangs on this subject presented the intellectual concepts about the ladder of consciousness. The third presentation gave certain practices that enable us to actually experience moving up to a higher rung of consciousness. The first practice, this is review, was for those at the absolute bottom of the ladder, which is the need to accept that actions have consequences. And in pointing out those consequences, help individuals realize it is unwise to act as they previously were acting. Second practice is that Gurudeva focuses our efforts on closing off the lower chakras and stabilizing ourselves in the Muladhara chakra, what he calls the box of Dharma. In a general sense, that is done by pursuing our natural ambitions to achieve wealth and love in a manner that adheres to virtuous and dutiful living. In a specific sense, a key practice is learning to reduce and eventually eliminate altogether anger. So today's presentation, the balance of this is to give additional information about Dharma. What does it mean to live in the box of Dharma? We're going to look at Publisher's Desk here, Making Dharma Your Own. It's from October 2016. So any references to a time sense relate to the year 2016. I didn't change what it says. This Publisher's Desk is based upon interactions with Hindu youth who had no interest in attending the temple. So one example was a youth I met here in our visitor center, and he told me the common perspective. I have no interest at all in going to the temple, but he asked me, is that all right? So what do you say? You're supposed to go to the temple once a week. But obviously he wasn't going to go if I simply said you should go once a week. So the answer I gave was, yes, that's fine, but you really have to understand and fulfill Dharma. That was my answer. So the challenge in fulfilling Dharma is that it's a very broad term, and for most people it's not clear how to manifest it fully in one's life. So this Publisher's Desk gives 5 specific ways in which we can implement Dharma in our life. Definition. Dharma is a complex and comprehensive term with many meanings, including religion, divine law, law of being, way of righteousness, ethics, duty, responsibility, virtue, justice, goodness, and truth. Really broad. In its most general sense, Dharma is that which sustains, keyword sustains, the orderly fulfillment of an inherent nature or destiny. Comes from the Sanskrit root dr, to sustain, carry, hold. We're trying to sustain things as they should be. Thus we can say that Dharma is that which sustains the cosmos, human society, and each member of society. Relating to the individual soul, it is the mode of conduct most conducive to spiritual advancement, the right and righteous path. So it's sustaining the individual to make good spiritual progress. As the meaning of Dharma is so broad, I find it best not to translate it into English, but rather use the word Dharma itself, which works since the term, like so many Sanskrit words, is gradually being absorbed into the English language. And for those of you who were with us last time, we quoted Avar last time. Attitude. So we get the first verse. Aram Seya Virumbu. Aram is the ancient Tamil word for Dharma. You go back to the oldest scriptures, they use the word Aram, and the more recent scriptures use the Sanskrit, put into Tamil as Dharmam or Dharumam. Meaning, desire to fulfill Dharma. What a wonderful way to have it. What a wonderful idea to have in the first verse. Desire to fulfill Dharma. However, Dharma has so many subtleties that many youth find it challenging to relate to the concept. In response, we explore here 5 aspects of the term and their application in life. Oh, what are the 5 aspects of Dharma? Said another way, what are 5 different ways Dharma applies to your life? So what do you think? Some of them are obvious, some of them are not. Give you another minute, think about it. The first and core meaning of Dharma is living virtuously and fulfilling duty. Well, this applies to everybody. Includes all the noble behaviors that we know are right and good. One learns to be selfless by thinking of others first, being respectful of parents, elders, and swamis, following divine law, especially ahimsa, which is mental, emotional, and physical injury, non-injury to all beings. Gurudeva taught that the worship of Lord Ganesha puts one naturally on the path of virtuous living. Quote, Ganesha sits on the psychic lotus of the Muladhara chakra, the ganglia of nerves at the base of the spine within everyone. This chakra governs time, matter, and memory. As the spiritual aspirant is lifted up from fear and confusion into conscious awareness of right thought, right speech, and right action, the Muladhara chakra becomes activated. But the seeker loses one thing. He loses his free instinctive willfulness. It is lost forever. Yet it is not a great loss. Man's own personal willfulness, his animalistic free will, is a feeble and insignificant force when compared to Lord Ganesha's divine will. When beholden to God Ganesha and inwardly awakened enough to be attuned to his will, it is then quite natural that the instinctive will bows down. Personal likes and dislikes vanish. Limited faculties of reason and analysis are overpowered and subdued by a greater will, a cosmic will, the will of Dharma. Oh, a fun story is we have our newest cat named Yali. Maybe you've seen him on Taka. He's called Yali because we found him when he was very, very small on the steps of Yerevan Temple. He was so small you could put him in your hand and you would feed him milk through a milk bottle when he started. Now he's quite strong and active. But he has an instinctive willfulness. Everything's fine as long as you do what he wants to do, but he's not going to do what you want him to do. That's that. So he's governed by his free instinctive willfulness, which is built into everyone since we have an animal body. So we need to move beyond that, not always do what our instinctive nature wants us to do. Second aspect of Dharma is entitled Two Paths, Two Dharmas. This is an important one because it's frequently a source of misunderstanding. Recently, so that's related to 2016, I gave a presentation at a weekend retreat of the Hindu Students Association. One of the many written questions submitted to me in advance showed a common misunderstanding. Quote, "We talk about detachment from Maya, but for most of us, our career and living is centered around worldly subjects and concerns. How can we reconcile this fact with our larger desire to separate from the material world?" In their pursuit of Dharma, these youth were struggling with the Upanishadic concept of self-abnegation, thinking it applies to all Hindus, thinking they should be more detached from worldliness. I pointed out that it is vital to understand that in Hinduism there are two distinct paths, that of the householder, called Grahastha Dharma, and that of the renunciate, Sannyasa Dharma. Self-abnegation and detachment from Maya belong to the renunciate path, not the householder path. This distinction of two paths is our second aspect of Dharma. To quickly cognize the difference between the two, take a look at the ancient ethical masterpiece Tirukkural by Tiruvalluvar. Part 1, entitled Virtue or Dharma, Autumn. Section 2 is the way of the householder, and Section 3 is the way of the renunciate. Scanning the chapter titles immediately reveals the deep distinctions. In other words, you don't even have to read the verses to understand the difference. Just look at the chapter titles. Chapters in the householder section include wife, children, love, hospitality, gratitude, possession of self-control, and avoidance of covetousness. Final 3 chapters focus on giving to others so generously as to achieve renown in the community. So charity is very important in the family Dharma. In other words, we have lots of possessions, and it's easy to become greedy and indulgent unless we are charitable, which balances it all out. Chapters in the renunciate life section include austerity, the impermanence of all things, renunciation, knowledge of truth, and eradication of desire. Without even reading the actual verses, it is clear that detaching from the materialistic world is a goal for those on the renunciate path, but not those on the householder path. So we need to keep that quite clear. For Hindu monks, the Tirukkural stresses renunciation of wealth. For the householder, becoming wealthy is encouraged with the goal of generously sharing one's abundance with others. A contemporary example of the latter is a person Hindu youth and young adults readily relate to, Mark Zuckerberg, co-founder and CEO of Facebook. Mark celebrated the birth of his daughter in December 2015 by pledging to give away 99% of his Facebook shares. Money from the shares, valued in 2016, was $45 billion, will go to projects and charities that advance human potential and promote equality. By the way, he has a vacation estate on Kauai and recently gave over $1 million in local COVID-19 programs. So, very nice move, Mark. Third aspect of Dharma is entitled, Which Stage of Life? Sanskrit term for stage of life is ashrama dharma. Ashrama dharma is the natural expression and maturing of the body, mind, and emotion through 4 progressive stages. So this was an idea that the youth group I was talking to had no idea about. I brought up the subject that your duties in life change according to your age. They never had thought about that. This idea was developed millennia ago and detailed in scriptures known as Dharma Shastras to highlight the fact that our Dharma duty changes and evolves as we mature from youth to adulthood, senior years, and old age. Gurudeva considered that in modern times, each ashrama is a 24-year period applying equally to men and women as follows. Brahmacharya, student, birth to age 24, learning, pursuing secular and religious studies. So that one is very ingrained in all societies and, of course, therefore understood. Point here is that in the Hindu perspective, one becomes an adult at age 24, not at age 21. A few more years of maturing are required to really not need good oversight from one's parents. We tend to be a bit rash or take risks until we get up to age 24. Grahasta, householder, age 24 to 48, raising a family, fulfilling a career or profession, serving the community. So that's the busiest time of life. Very much engaged in being of service to other family members. Vanaprastha, elder advisor, age 48 to 72, offering one's experience to help others. Sannyasa, retiree, age 72 onward, withdrawing from society and devoting more time to religious practices. So you can see what we're supposed to focus on dramatically changes during each 24-year period. And it has to do with physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual maturity. Fourth key to Dharma is to understand it as one of the 4 goals of life. We've gone through this a number of times. This is a short version. Sanskrit term is Purushartha, which is Purusha, soul, plus Artha, which is wealth, but in this case it means goal. There are 4 pursuits in which humans may legitimately engage, also called Chaturvarga, fourfold good. They form a cornerstone of Hindu ethics. Dharma, duty and piety, artha, wealth, kama, love and enjoyment, and moksha, enlightenment and liberation. It's vital to note that while Dharma is a goal in its own right, it is also the guiding principle of the other 3 goals, as it defines the proper way to pursue wealth, pleasure, and moksha. So that's the key point here. We need to pursue love and wealth in ways which are in harmony with the principles of Dharma. Which sounds easy till we get involved in life, and then we can stop doing that. Do we acquire wealth in a virtuous and honest way? So this is the Satyam computer scandal in Andhra Pradesh. He got carried away. ended up in jail. Our spouse is faithful to one another. Dharma, virtue and piety, is the steady guide for artha and kama and ultimately leading the soul to moksha. Then we get to one you may not have thought of. Fifth aspect of Dharma relates to one's profession. Sanskrit, it is called Varna Dharma. As we read in Gurudeva's Dancing with Shiva, Varna Dharma defines the individual's obligations and responsibilities within the nation, society, community, class, occupational subgroup, and family. This is part of the vision that society needs to function in a harmonious and stable way. And we can do our part by fulfilling our Varna Dharma. Some professions or principles that guide it are defined in formal declarations. For example, Western medical doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, which includes this promise: I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures which are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. Lawyers take an oath, one version of which states, I will employ for the purpose of maintaining the causes confided to me such means only as are consistent with truth and honor. Other professions, such as certified public accountants, also known in some countries as chartered accountants, have a written code that members are expected to follow. Hundreds of occupations without formal oaths or codes have traditional expectations, which constitute an informal understanding of their dharmic ideas. And then what I said before, the idea is that when individuals fulfill their respective Varna Dharma, the whole of society functions smoothly. Pondering this fifth dimension of Dharma keeps us reminded of the ethics, goals, and guidelines of our occupation. So we get a summary. By meditating on and understanding these five aspects of Dharma, youth and adults can unfold a much better sense of Dharma's place in their life and thus strive in an informed way to fulfill the first verse of Attitude, Aram Seya Virumbu, desire to fulfill Dharma. So that's the idea. We need to understand how it applies to our life, according to our situation, our age, etc., and apply it as fully as we can. Third topic, we get some testimony from the Hinduism Today article. Now hear from Nepal's youth, a very interesting article in the current edition of April edition of Hinduism Today, which I mentioned before is now on our website. It's very interesting to see differences between the youth in India and the youth of Nepal, Hindu youth. They're different because Nepal was not colonized by the British, so it has different attitudes. Today it's Prajan Dangol, 26, served as a teenage priest for 5 consecutive years during the Shikali Chatra festival at the Rudrayani and Shikali temples in Kokana. If anyone knows those terms, excuse my pronunciation. Now he is an IT engineer at Dish Home TV station. It's obvious that his family is very religious, given that they are priests in Nepal's tantric tradition. They start their day with morning puja at home to Lakshmi, Bhimsen, and Buddha. Interesting mix of Hinduism and Buddhism in Nepal. And then to goddess Rudrayani at their family temple. He appreciates his parents' lifestyle, but given a chance, he would like to introduce a modern approach to fit the religion into a busy schedule so that life and religion can coexist. He would minimize the timing of rituals, meaning make them shorter, and the cost involved so that everyone could fit a decent puja into their budget. There should not come a time when people avoid ancestral customs by giving excuses of time and money. He celebrates festivals mainly at his community temples of Shikali and Rudrayani. He also fasts on special days for both the deities while preparing a big puja in their honor, doing it with honesty and respect. Hinduism is an important aspect of his life. For Prajan, God is what people believe in, even though they can't see him. He says, I believe in karma, dharma, and reincarnation because they are the three aspects of human beings. What we do in life is karma, what we serve to people is dharma, and what we get after death is reincarnation. In terms of our spiritual religious comparisons, this person is obviously very, very religious, but you don't sense any independent pursuit of spirituality, such as meditation or deeper studies. Well, not a criticism, of course, but just an observation. That concludes our presentation.